and we're just going to reflect a little bit on the speech that we heard from President Ramaphosa and some of the highlights of that speech. So starting with the overall impression of the speech, this was a good speech. It was a speech which I think set the tone, a tone of humility. The president acknowledged that they didn't win this election outright and they have to work with other people, that the voters of South Africa have not given a mandate to people in particular to run this particular administration. As a result, we heard a conciliatory tone from the president. But in addition, we heard the president actually discuss some of the divisions that exist in South Africa. There is one South Africa, but what we're seeing is divisions in class, in gender, in sex, and in race. And he was speaking about how we need to be more cognizant of that in order to make sure that we can fix that. So on those topics, he was very strong. He also spoke about the idea of a rapid and inclusive and sustainable economy with sustainable growth. And that's something that's important. He then referenced how we need to have a national dialogue and a social compact so that we can achieve the NDP objectives. This is something that I also want to flesh out a little bit, because this idea of a national compact or dialogues is similar to what we saw in the first iteration of the Ramaphosa administration, where we had a lot of these commissions and discussions. Remember, there was one for higher education, there was one for GBV, there were a lot of commissions. But when you look at the statistics for crime, for instance, or access to higher education, those statistics remain stubborn, and some of them actually went up. So there are going to be some challenges with just having a Likotla and actually being able to achieve the outcomes that you seek to achieve in those particular things. There's something that he touched on that was very sober, very serious. He spoke about people who seek to divide, people who seek to distract, people who seek to cast doubt on democracy. He spoke about the responsibility or the mandate to defend the Constitution, to defend democracy. When President Ramaphosa was speaking on these things, it's very obvious that he was making reference to the MK party and some of their rhetoric around how the election was illegitimate or stolen, or how there were issues with the ballots or any manner of election denialism. He was clearly trying to put across that that is not something that the South African broader community is interested in, or something that they will definitely be pushing back against. He made reference to the African Continental Free Trade Area and how it's going to be also an engine for growth. He has made reference to this free trade area multiple times, and the reality is, even though there's optimism in all of the African leaders' speeches, the reality is it's not going to happen. It doesn't have feasibility. The African Free Trade Area, as things stand, is one of those places where there's been very slow progress, no progress whatsoever. He also spoke, this is important to note, the president made reference to global warming. Then he said that we're going to be ambitious. We're going to do something that is just and inclusive. That part of the whole speech there was for Patrice Motsepe. It was for all of the people in the renewable energy side of things, because he was telling them, I got you. The whole conversation about just energy transition is one that is about IPPs. He is committed to this. We've seen the expansion of IPPs over the years and over the weeks. And it's something that's going to continue to happen. So that reference to IPPs, it's definitely something that you better watch out for, note, and if you have concerns about coal and baseload, all of that, it's something that you have to bear in mind. There's something that I want to speak about a little bit. The ANC speaks about inclusive growth, rapid growth, job creation. The Democratic Alliance agrees with them on the bylines: growth, jobs, economy. But they are different visions to how to achieve this. And this is where there'll be a challenge. The Democratic Alliance just believes that if you fix the credibility of the government, you bring in investors, and then those investors then create jobs. However, you can have a thing such as jobless growth. Jobless growth occurs when investors come in, spend money on infrastructure, but don't necessarily add to the workforce. And if we're looking at the levels of automation in South Africa, that's one of the concerns. So you can either have jobs with growth or jobless growth. The Democratic Alliance manifesto looks at cutting spending. It looks at reducing the budget deficit. And in order to do that, you have to cut expenditure. They speak about cutting the size of the public workforce. And those kind of things, I think, are going to be areas of tension between the Democratic Alliance and the ANC. So this question of growth and jobs is going to be a very, very big one going forward. And it's going to be interesting to see how they resolve this, because if you have jobless growth, you're not including more people, you're not including more workers, and that's something that we all have to be cognizant of. So the president's speech, in conclusion, it wasn't heavy on details, and I think the details will have to look for them and start asking questions. And the first detail that we'll be looking for is who is going to be on the cabinet. We've heard that the Democratic Alliance has been promised 7 seats. Maybe it's less. We've also heard the dispute between the Democratic Alliance and the ANC around what constitutes sufficient consensus. And as those debates begin to unfold, we will then begin to get clarity on how this particular administration will look and how the administration will work. What do you think, though? What do you think of the president's speech? I think it was a good speech. It was a solid speech. President Cyril Ramaphosa is always good at giving speeches. What time am on? 6 minutes. President Cyril Ramaphosa is always good at giving a strong and solid speech. He has never failed to give a speech that has the right mix of forward-looking, understanding and appreciating the problems, and also having humility. But the challenge that he's really going to face is going to be one of execution in this administration, because he's not running all of these things in one administration, as to say there are 2 different entities that he's running this with. He's running this with the Democratic Alliance, with other partners in this coalition. So it's going to be quite important to see how they navigate all of that. I must say, though, the markets have responded well. We've seen an improvement in the JSE. We've seen also an improvement in the Rand. The Rand has gone into the 17 territory for the first time, I think, this year, and that's a good thing. So we're seeing that there's a lot of positivity. This government of semi-national unity is one that is in its honeymoon period. The question is, how long will the honeymoon be? Will we see a long honeymoon or will we see a short honeymoon? I'm actually thinking that we may see a shorter honeymoon because of some of the remarks that were made by Helen Zille. Helen Zille has already started putting, spanners in the works, undermining her colleagues, undermining the infrastructure of the very coalition that they want to work. So we're going to have to see where things land, but it's still very much a honeymoon period. President Ramaphosa gave a good speech. There are some challenges that will exist with his coalition partners. What do you guys think, though? Let's have a conversation in the comments. Till the next one.